You're listening to a Pop House Network podcast for developers by developers.
Welcome to Java OffHeap episode 76. Hey everyone. After a little bit of a summer break and just enjoying the very few months that we can enjoy outdoors, it's time for us to start coming back and having these on the regular. So for those who have never heard of this before, my name is Freddie Gimi. I'm one of the co-hosts here at Java OffHeap. I'm one of the distinguished principal engineers at Expedia Group, author, speaker, Java champion, and I'm here with my usual suspects.
Hi, everybody. Bob Paulin, independent software developer, Apache Software Foundation member, Java champion, speaker, and CJUG board chair.
Josh Juno, Java EE, Jakarta EE developer, database administrator, author, Java champion, Apache NetBeans committer.
He tells ghost stories too.
No, it's like I see that people.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Manella, Senior Director responsible for open source Spring engineering at VMware, author, speaker, Java champion, curmudgeon at large.
All right. And before we dive in, we want to thank our sponsors. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a monitoring and analytics platform that integrates with over 450 technologies, including AWS services, Docker, and Kubernetes. Datadog's platform brings together metrics, traces, and logs in one place so you can get full visibility in your environment and improve your application performance. With machine learning-based alerts, customizable dashboards, and distributed tracing, Datadog makes it easy to unify disparate data sources so you can troubleshoot faster. Start your free Datadog trial today. Listeners of this podcast will receive a free t-shirt once you install the agent and create one dashboard. Visit javaoffheap.com/Datadog to get started. And again, the URL is javaoffheap.com/Datadog to get started. We thank them for keeping the lights on and the mics rolling. And, like I have to say, we use it at We use Datadog where we're in the corner of my world, and it makes life super easy. So, if you haven't an APM solution yet, give them a shot because they're pretty good. All right, now let's dive into what 76 and a break of summer brought us.
Let's go.
All right, so let's start with the news conference. Josh.
We've got lots of conferences coming up. One that we want to mention is JakartaOne LiveStream. This is going to be covering everything Jakarta EE, microprofile, and really cloud. And this is going to be on December 6th virtually. This is all online. You can take a look now at JakartaOne.org. And you can look at some of the other conferences that they've got around the world as well.
Well, and not on our list that's coming up is JavaOne.
That's correct.
I can't believe we actually didn't have that on like our original spreadsheet, but JavaOne is happening. What is it? October 17th through the 20th.
Yep.
In Vegas.
In Vegas. Yep.
So JavaOne is back. So if you're
next week.
Next week. Yep.
So if you hear us, you can go, or Josh, you're going, right?
I'm going. I believe Freddie's going.
Yeah, I'm playing. I'm
playing music.
Yeah.
Nice.
Playing music. I'm part of the No Pointers, bringing the band together again. So
it'll be nice to see everybody.
Yeah.
I know that they are doing live stream for the keynotes at least. I'm not sure about which sessions, if they will do live stream for any of them, but that means that they're probably going to be recorded. So by the time you hear this, take a look online. You may be able to see some of the JavaOne content.
Yep. Cool. Back to their mothership.
Next up, we've got SpringOne, conveniently also December 6th, although we're 6th to the 8th. So fortunately, December 6th is the workshop, so you can fly into San Francisco and watch the JakartaOne LiveStream from San Francisco the day before you attend SpringOne. So I would highly recommend. SpringOne is back in person. Learn from the experts everything about Spring Framework 6, Spring Boot 3, native compilation, all the latest and greatest going on in the Spring portfolio.
Yes, looking forward to that native compilation.
Oh yeah.
Sounds good. Next up, we've got the jChampions conference. This is happening also virtually. This will be January 19th, 20th, 23rd, and 24th. And I'm on the committee for this one, also the JakartaOne LiveStream, but this one, and just wanted to mention, this is virtual, and there are no plans to make this an in-person conference yet because it's really never been in person. It's been virtual ever since its inception. This is only JavaChampions speaking, so it's pretty rich in content. Not that there are any conferences that don't have really rich content, but you definitely hear from the JavaChampions here. And all the conference sessions are recorded. You can go back and you can look at the last couple of years of sessions online now. This one should be the same. Hoping to get lots of good presentations here.
Yep. So call for participation is still open.
It is still open, but it's only open for until the end of October. So
all right.
If you're a Java champion, get your paper out there now.
Get in gear. All right.
Speaking of CFPs,
Yeah.
the next one we've got on our list is some old stomping ground for most of us, which is Devnexus. Devnexus, April 4th through the 6th. CFP closes November 15th. So definitely get your talks in, and hopefully we'll see everybody in Atlanta.
Atlanta, where it's still cold up here and warm down there. So, I mean, yeah, that's always a good one. The Java one of the South.
Yep.
if you will.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to hopefully attending my first Devnexus.
Yes,
I know. We can finally do like an episode, an OffHeap episode, like with all the OG content in there.
Everybody.
Oh, yeah,
No, that'd be awesome. So who do we have to buy a beer to get that to work? Sure, Michael knows.
Everybody knows. I know a guy. I know a guy.
All right. And I guess like the next we have is like we just closed down like one conference here. Well, they're in Chicago. It was actually like some little background story. I managed to make my way to Chicago and to speak at JConf. And we were going to record an OffHeap episode at the time, but then Michael had better ideas. And while we love recording for y'all, it's not a lot of the time we get to like watch a baseball game from the rooftop. So that was nice. But yeah, the actual purpose is went to JConf. I think Josh, you were down there too. And all of us really. And
really quick to back up, special shout out, thanks to Phil Berman for helping us out with the hooking up with the Cubs.
The Cubs tickets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And it was very, very nice. Like as an in-person conference, Chicago I miss it a lot. Got to see a lot of local people. Mary was there always, and we got to see like the usual suspects, right? Like we got to see Pratik and Vince and all this wonderful community
and all the Chicago crews. So yeah, it was definitely good. The content was very balanced between just enterprise stuff and kind of bleeding edge stuff. So I mean, it was actually good. Like, you had a lot of the talent that is at the Devnexus, which again is like, Java one of the South, just there in Chicago. So
it was nice too to see lots of people from overseas. I mean, I saw lots of, I met up with Edwin that I do a couple of talks with from the Netherlands, and we had Ivar was there, of course, and some other folks from Eclipse. And I got to meet Martin Mulders for the first time, which was really nice, and lots of good vendors too. The vendor got lots of T-shirts, so I appreciate those. Thank you to the vendors for having great swag, and the sessions were great. The ones that I was able to attend.
Yeah, no,
and it's super important. I mean, I guess the thing with things kind of starting to come back a little bit is to support those conferences that are out there. I mean, I've seen kind of like conferences that are selling out and conferences that are not as attended. And the important thing is, if the conference that you see that's by you is there, like, and you're on the bubble, it is in your interest to go see that conference, because again, the networking opportunities you're going to get, the knowledge opportunities that you're going to get, and just supporting that conference that's happening in your locale is a big deal, because those don't have to stick around. I mean, if you don't support them, there's other places that they're going to go. So,
yeah, to second that, when we look at the macroeconomics that we're facing over the next year or two, I think everybody's on the same page that layoffs are probably coming for some percentage of our industry. And it's those that spend the time and invest in themselves, whether it be through conferences, training, et cetera, that will be the ones that land relatively comfortably. And that's what's going to separate them from those that don't. And so taking the opportunities, investing in yourself, investing in the community via these conferences. Like Bob pointed out, these conferences aren't cheap to run. And we talk about ones like Devnexus and whatnot that are community run. These guys are doing this, they're not making tons of money on this. This is literally, what the money they made from last year pays for next year kind of situations. And so, anything you can do to help out those conferences by attending keeps this going. So if you've ever thought about, I'd love to go see a conference, now's the time to do it. If you ever want that opportunity in the future.
Yeah. No, definitely. And like Michael Bob said, it's a great networking opportunity. I got my next gig, I got it because of a conference. So I was part of Devnexus and CJAC. So, both get involved, attend them, and expand your network. So, I will be there. Most likely one of us will be somewhere around the Java, this conferences we're mentioning. So
yep, you never knew who you're going to run to, and it could be us.
Sorry.
Or hey,
we'll be around the bar.
Absolutely.
We take free drinks.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Buy us a beer if you like our content, or
free is in free beer and free is in free speech. ApacheCon also had their conference last week in New Orleans, so I went to that. That was it was a sellout. So it was great for ApacheCon to get a sellout. It's not always the biggest conference, but it is the only conference you can go to where you're actually just talking to the people that are writing the code rather than the vendors or the people trying to sell you stuff. So it actually kind of restored my faith in conferences in general, just going and talking to the folks there and talking to people that are writing code for those open source projects was super refreshing. So, the other thing you can do yourself a favor of, if you've been working at home for the last 2 years, like most of us have been, going out, getting out there, talking to other developers, talking about what they've been doing for that time. Like, it didn't have to be forced. It was just like, hey, what have you been working on? And just everything that came after that was like, oh, wow. All right. I've got a bunch of other stuff I've got to research and learn and learn how to do. Had a conversation with somebody, Matt Topple, who wrote a book on Apache Arrow. And now I suddenly want to learn a little bit of Go and about Apache Arrow. So, expand your boundaries, go to the conferences, meet people, and just see where it goes.
Yeah. All right.
Talk to networking for sure. And learning what everybody else is up to and sharing the knowledge.
Mm-hmm. So talking about sharing the knowledge, now let's go to our news segment.
Yes.
All right.
Josh, you're up.
Big news for Jakarta EE. Jakarta EE 10 has been released. This is a huge release for Jakarta EE because this is the first release since Java EE 8 that there are actually new features.
How many years has that been?
That's been quite a while. 2017, I believe.
5 years.
So it has been quite a while.
Oh gosh, no way.
There has, of course, we went through the struggles and actually lots of hard work by so many people. I really appreciate
yourself included. Like, you're one of the people that kicked this off.
Well, I helped kick it off, but I didn't really contribute any code towards making the transition to Eclipse, but lots of people did, and really appreciated by the community, and lots of hard work. And now we're finally seeing some of it pay off with Jakarta EE 9, 9.1, and now 10, which is huge. just to name a couple of the new features in here, OpenID Connect now supported. Java Server Faces is now just Jakarta Faces, and not just a name change. You can also make pages with just straight Java now. There's lots of new constructs that are available for use. There are also new features in lots of the other APIs as well. It's definitely worth taking a look at. If you look at the number of specifications that are updated here, we've got quite a few major updates, 12 minor and 11 major updates on these different specifications. So that's quite a bit. Just to name a couple more, authentication modules been updated. Concurrency 3.0 now. They've got asynchronous methods.
Does that do anything with? Does that have anything in there for Loom yet?
For what?
Loom.
Loom. No, nothing with Loom yet. Hopefully that will be coming soon. Oh, yeah, that would be nice. But yeah, and just to get off on tangent there, I did see a Loom talk when I was at JConf, and that is just amazing. That was amazing. Anyway, that was just a tangent there. CDI has undergone quite a few changes. There's now a CDI Lite that you can use for an even lighter runtime. Expression language is updated, JSON updates, lots more. So
10 includes the core profile, doesn't it?
yes, the core profile, thank you, Michael, is also part of this, which allows you to run even leaner and meaner if you're creating microservices and runtimes. You can do it with just a few of the specifications now, and you have a lot of power behind you. So definitely worth looking at. And there are going to be quite a few sessions at these upcoming conferences too on Jakarta EE 10, microprofile, how to use these two together even better. One of the sessions I was looking at that's going to be, I think at JakartaOne, is Eclipse microprofile 6, which isn't out yet, and Jakarta EE 10, how well they meld together. So just seeing how these things, it seemed like for a while they were running separately and they were kind of fighting against each other, but now they're kind of, they're still staying separate, but they're working in harmony to produce, great things.
There was a survey that just came out, right? That there was a developer survey.
Yeah.
One of the questions on there was like, do you want them to stay separate and whatever? It'd be interesting to see the report afterwards on how that lands.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of, I don't know. I think it's kind of split down the middle on that one. It's kind of nice to see.
Highlander situation, like there must be only one.
I think it's kind of nice to see microprofile, evolve on its own timeline and whatnot. It's also nice to see those features as part of a standard with Jakarta EE. So, you can go either way on that one, but they do work well together. That's the main point.
Interesting.
So, yeah, go get Jakarta EE 10 and start working with it. And I can tell you, I've worked with it quite a bit. Just run some examples. Nothing in production, of course, yet, but Pyara is my server of choice. They're still on alpha, so they won't be in production until next year with 10. So staying tuned for that Pyara 6. But also just a word of note, once they release Pyara 6, Pyara 5 is going to be not supporting or not updating anymore. So you'll want to have to make the jump.
Are there any of the open source servers that are up on 10 yet? Like is Tom EE or any of them?
Glassfish.
Glassfish
is there, of course, 7, Glassfish 7, Wildfly, I think 27.0
is up to spec.
0, I think is up.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the other one that will be there soon, if it's not already, Open Liberty.
Okay.
So
I'd be up.
a few of them getting there.
Okay, great.
So
Survived the name change. Now on to better things.
They did.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good things to come.
All right, Michael.
Yeah. So in a related vein, so Spring Framework 6.
Be outdone.
It's related, and I'll get to that in a minute. So Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3 both are going RC basically as we're recording this. So Spring Framework 6 went RC yesterday, I believe yesterday on stage at DevVox. Great job to the team on that.
Yes.
Spring Boot 3 is going to go RC, I believe, next week. So those will both be available. So that kind of completes feature work around our major themes for this round of majors. That includes baseline of Java 17, the switch to the Jakarta namespace. So we'll, kind of laying the foundation so that people can consume those APIs you're talking about.
Nice.
In the Jakarta namespace. The AOT and native compilation capabilities via Graal VM. And then extensive observability updates across the portfolio, distributed tracing and whatnot throughout the portfolio. So definitely with these RCs out, check them out. We're looking for feedback. We want to know what you like, what you don't like. Please let us know. And let us know either via GitHub as well as in person at SpringOne.
Yeah. Just find him at the bar. And the last one I think that's you, Josh, right?
So who's been watching JavaFX? JavaFX 19 is out, and this came out in September. And so, of course, I've been a fan of JavaFX ever since it came out. I haven't spent a ton of time with it, but I'm glad to see it moving forward. I think Gluon is certainly a big, a contender behind that, helping to move it forward. So I can't quite name too much that is brand new with this because I'm certainly not using it too much on my own. But there is an article that mentions that they've got some CSS updates, some model behavior fixes, bug fixes, of course, dependency upgrades, and some security changes. So if you're using JavaFX or if you are interested in it, take a look at JavaFX 19.
Definitely, and it's actually like Gluon is using it behind the scenes for a lot of its like essentially almost like write ones, deploy like on the different platforms for like iOS and Android. I know that's a big part of where they play. So yeah, it's good to see as an all swing developer. It's good to see that the desktop development in Java is still alive and well. So
yeah, definitely.
All right. And that brings us to the meaty part of this podcast, which I am like revving at the start line because this is going to be an interesting one. And for those who don't know, there was a license change, which is they tend to happen in our industry from time to time. But this is a big player, so it's creating essentially big waves. So Lightbend, previously known as TypeSafe, created this essentially distributed messaging framework called Akka, and it's based on the concept of actors and it's event messaging with the concept of actors. That was one of the things that put Lightbend on the map. And for the longest time, they had been essentially Apache license, so much that there were a lot of people just went in and adopted. The technology is very solid, and there's a lot of there's like the technology itself is there's a lot of love for it, but there was a license change where now I think they're called BSL now. They're in a business. They just.
What's the project? You described what it is, what it does, but you didn't actually say the name.
Oh, Akka. Sorry, Akka, AKKA. Right. So they changed their licensing out of like Apache 2.0 to business source license BSL version 1.1. Which essentially says, if you want to use this, you got to pay for this. And the way it works,
let's hold on. Yeah, we shouldn't say that because if you make a certain amount of money, you need to pay for us.
Right.
Well, even that, you have to pay for it in production. So if you make a certain amount of money, you have to pay for it in production. Lightbend has said they're willing to make arrangements with other open source projects, which I'm sure we'll talk about in more detail with regards to how well that is or hasn't been received. But it's essentially if you're a typical enterprise, let's say, size wise, you are expected to now have to, if you're going to use Akka as in production, you will have to pay for it.
Right. And this is not a support contract. This is not like, this is something you have to acquire. You have to get a license. And just to, like, as we go down this rabbit hole, the way this works is that until the license change, which was committed, I think, a month ago, maybe, every code that was in the repository was still like under Apache license. So that means that, like, you know, you can use up to a certain version is still free to use. It's still the Apache v2 license. So for those who really said, like, I still need to use it and I don't want to, or I cannot pay for the production, you know, you can still use, you can pin it to the last open source version or Apache license version and keep using that. Of course, we do not recommend that because you get into sort of like Log4Shell kind of situations, but it is something that's there.
Well, I mean, have any vulnerabilities been discovered against this version of Akka yet? I mean, that's the crux of it is you are pinned to that last version. If there are releases after that include security patches to something that comes up in it or a dependency,
I mean, it's not
you're kind of stuck.
I mean, it's not just security vulnerabilities, right? It's by pinning to any dependency, you're limiting yourself. You know, the baseline of your application, the baseline is, you know, Java, et cetera. The any new features that come out, not for you. Like there's more. CVEs are obviously the big red flag. Like we can't do it because of this, but there are plenty of other reasons why you just don't want to do it.
Yeah, we're not still in the Java 8 days. Now we have a new JVM a couple times a year. So
sure,
yeah, you don't want to be stuck.
Right, and that was the other part. Like as things move, sometimes, you know, the dependencies will not let you move if you're pinning to a certain version, right? But
I don't think anybody views while pinning is a short-term Band-Aid option. I don't think anybody views a practical long-term solution for this.
Well, yeah, and folks are already reacting to this, right? So I mean, you've got open source projects at the ASF that are trying to figure out, okay, so this happened, what do we do with it? So I mean, some of the drivers to their decision is the business source license 1.1 is on the Apache Category X list. This is a list that is published by the ASF of licenses that are not considered open source and compatible with the Apache license. So if you have dependencies that are Category X, you can't use them and say your software is an Apache license. So I mean, you know, communities that are dependent on Akka, and the sort of the edge of the sword is like Apache Flink had some interactions with this license because they use Akka in their software. And they released an entire blog post stating what they're going to do on it. And just to kind of paraphrase and summarize, they are staying with Akka on the version that is still Apache licensed, because then they can say we're not using a Category X license. And they're going to basically wait and see if the community forks and say there is a continuation where somebody forks the ASF, the Apache licensed Akka, and will continue to patch. It is very likely that a community like Flink is going to use that new dependency in their software. If it does not, I could see Akka maybe even going away in Flink. You know, as vulnerabilities and things become outdated, there's things they're doing on their software that are dependent on things in the Akka library. They're going to have to either re-implement that in their software, or they're going to have to find another dependency that is kind of take its place.
To me, this is interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, we've seen this kind of license shift in infrastructure. We've seen it in, you know, MongoDB is probably the poster child for, you know, shifting the, because
Elastic, another example.
Yeah, we've seen a few of these where like basically databases are the obvious one, and that's because they were getting rolled over by
AWS
cloud providers. Exactly, their cloud providers were like,
we don't know, right? Like those were those were like they had a cloud provision.
That's exactly what. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going.
A lot of BSL and they're targeting, right?
Yeah.
Certain revenue level, but that impacts more than just cloud providers. I have clients that would be impacted by BSL.
Yeah, and so like that's kind of what I'm getting at is this is the first time we've seen this as really as an application framework. Akka is a framework that you build an application on. This is the first time we've seen that I'm aware of this license shift with that. And that's a much bigger thing that I, quite frankly, I don't get. I mean, like when you think of applications, and it's hard to rip Mongo out of your app. Like there's not a lot of options there. I mean, you can go from Mongo to document DB and that kind of thing, but fundamentally you're still using a Mongo style database. Like ripping a framework out, especially at the companies will pay to rewrite their app. Like this, people rewrite apps all the time. I don't.
Yeah, no, but and to add to that pain is like just to understand the magnitude. It's like if it was like an Apache, like if it was like Apache Math 3, right? Like it's like, oh, okay, fine. I need to choose something else, right? Like you're right, but Akka is a distributed messaging framework. Like you don't have it in one project. If you decided to build your ecosystem around Akka, like which is something that you say, like if I'm choosing Akka as a messaging framework, I'm going to use it everywhere.
We should dig into that though. Bob, you mentioned Play. That's actually an interesting example because so Play is a framework that is built on Akka. It's a web framework built on Akka, but Lightbend has walked away from it. So Lightbend has already walked away, but they are giving Play the exception for Akka. Like if you're using Play, you can use Akka within Play. So like this is, to me as an end user, this is sending a clear message. Like anything Lightbend that comes out of Lightbend, either they're going to walk away from it or they're going to charge me for. Like I can't trust the open source promise from Lightbend.
Right, and that is the weird part, right? Like because it backs us into this weird corner. Like I understand like the real danger, or like okay, the danger that Lightbend, or the reason why they probably make this decision, and this is all speculation, is that Lightbend is strapped for cash, right? They're trying a different business model. They're trying to essentially keep the doors open, lights on, right? And the alternative will be that Akka becomes Lightbend becomes a company, a defunct company, and there's a product that either nobody maintains or and that is another question is like what is, there's all this part that I think we should explore as well on like survivability of this one sponsor kind of projects, right? So it is not clear cut. Like it probably might be the right decision for Lightbend, but it just irks. Like it creates ripples on this stuff. Like when the announcement came in, the first thing we had to do, it's like, are we using Akka?
I mean, Lightbend did this, Freddie, to your point, Lightbend did this because all their other products haven't made enough money to keep the lights on. And it's the only thing with enough adoption to charge and actually keep the lights on. Like it's the only thing that's got the adoption rate that to come up with the dollars to do the math.
Yeah, but I mean, I have to challenge that because I mean, look at what's happened in the industry when these situations have come up before. So Freddie, you're very close to this because when Elastic was doing stuff like this, like keeping things like authentication out of the core product where you had to pay for a license to get something basic like that, what happened? Oh, OpenSearch, which Expedia and a number of other companies are supporters of, right? So AWS being another one. They forked Elastic using the open source Apache license code as the base, and they have carried on updates where they have merged those things in that were not being provided by the product company that owned the governance of that beforehand. So they decided, hey, you know what? The fork is worth it. We're going to do that, and we're going to own it. That could happen here with Akka too. I don't know if that's what's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet, as far as I know.
But that is a possible.
But it is a real possibility. So
I don't think it's as high of a possibility as most people think, or most people are describing. Akka is not your run-of-the-mill Java project.
Neither is Elastic. Elastic is a huge, complicated project.
Not disagreeing, but it's Java.
Is Akka not Akka
Scala?
Okay,
Yeah. So you are just by that first step.
Community is this little.
Exactly. Yeah. You like, and that's one of the big things. People are talking about a fork of Akka. Like this, we're not talking about a fork of, we're not talking about, iBaddest to myBaddest kind of thing. Like that is not an apples to apples comparison in my eyes. This is very much because Akka is consumed by a lot of Java projects. It's kind of lumped in that ecosystem, but it's not it's not a run-of-the-mill Java project. So I do think that the options for a fork are very, very limited. And I don't see a fork of Akka coming to pass where it actually has long-term viability.
Based on your statement, we would need a Java implementation of Akka to have a community to support it.
Which, I mean, in that case, you might as well just use React.
You're rewriting. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm just following the reasoning that you're giving.
100%. I mean, look at other examples of that, right? Like the Graal JIT compiler. It was written in Java. Why? Yeah. One of the reasons for that is because they wanted Java support.
A lot of Java.
Yeah, they wanted the community support. Like that barrier to entry to take on something that's as technically complex as Akka. Akka is not, in ORM. This is insanely. This is very complex software, low-level software that most enterprise developers don't deal with on a day-to-day basis. And then you've got the language barrier, and then you've got there's just too many layers here for me to see a practical fork anytime soon, at least.
So a point of clarification there, though, like it's not that they choose Scala to own this space. I think it's probably when they started this, Scala was probably the only thing that they like. It was a choice.
It came out of TypeSafe. Like it was a Scala company.
Right.
But to be fair, Akka predates TypeSafe, right? And
it was basically their first thing. I mean, so Jonas was released. It was like Jonas
product.
Jonas was the CEO. Like that was his baby. I thought.
Okay.
Well, but I thought that was he built TypeSafe around Akka.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I thought Akka predated the business. That was
maybe.
That was my point.
Yeah,
is that the open source came first, and then the business grew around that because it became popular and people were using it.
I mean, but it's still the same. Like, it's not like somebody else built a business around an open source project. Sure. It's literally the guy who wrote it. He needed to get paid, so he built a product.
That's not the point I'm trying to make. I guess it's looking forward at it is whether there is an actual community that can support it. If there's not, and you're making the argument that hey, it's written in Scala, all of the support was coming from TypeSafe. Good luck finding developers that are going to be able to come in and contribute to this project if you were to fork it.
In an effective manner. Yeah.
Maybe that's part of the calculus because I mean, we've seen things like that before. Like, I mean, if you look at, what's happened with, before Resilience for J, what was it that we all used?
Oh, Hystrix.
Yeah.
Hystrix, which Netflix just abandoned.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basically said, hey, we're just not supporting it anymore. So, hey, you might want to check out this other library. And folks moved to that other library rather than saying, hey, let's fork Hystrix and continue developing that. So, I mean, that's possible too. But
especially when we think about, going back to the, Java versus Scala angle, if Java applications are the predominant consumer of Akka, then I would expect somebody to be like, well, I'm just going to
write Java.
Exactly. I need what Akka does. I don't know. I'm not going to learn Scala to fork Scala to Akka. Yeah. Let me write something in Java that does what I need.
I think it depends on how many outside developers there are for Akka. I mean, how many people were committing PRs and committing
outside of Lightbend?
Outside of Lightbend. If there were, then those people would maybe have.
No, I mean that's a statistic we could find. I mean, if you look at the GitHub repo, you probably would be able to figure out whether that's it. I mean, so again, like if you have an open source project and you're trying to understand whether this thing is vulnerable to this type of activity, like, again, you need more than one vendor involved in it. And like ASF has strictly been like, we're not going to promote you out of the incubator if we see that there's just one company running this project. Like, there has to be more support than just one company. Obviously, Akka, while having an Apache license, was never an Apache project. You got one guy and you've got a company or kind of surrounding it. You don't really have an ecosystem outside that company. It is a vulnerability to the governance model, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah. If my
I don't think it's just a governance model issue there. I think it's a community as well.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have the community in place, I don't think the governance model matters as much.
We've always agreed to disagree on that point.
I know. I just had to voice it.
I mean, the point we agree on though is the community is kind of consolidated under one roof. For Akka.
I would argue that they don't have enough of a community
outside of.
Yeah, like, I mean, like I don't consider the employees to be the community, right? Like,
we don't know.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, which means they don't have much of an actual community
outside. Yeah.
Have we looked though and saw that they don't have people?
So I just pulled it up on GitHub. They do it like, let's see. So let's say past. I mean, give me a threshold. Let's say 100 commits or more,
10, maybe, or
so
20.
Well, so because GitHub only lists the top 100 contributors,
right.
And so by the 31st, you're only at 60 commits for the contributor.
Oh, okay. So it drops off pretty quick.
It does. I mean, you break 100 commits at number 21. Okay. So the top 20 have 100 commits or more on the project.
So it's very heavy on the in-house.
I mean, you've got, so in order, number 1 is Victor with 3,100. You got 2,800 is the next, 1,100 is the one after that, 780, 640. Jonas has got 625 and he's number 6 on the list. You know, you're 500, like it's a couple people. Like, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, and then you got the long tail of, it goes out to 100, but we got like 6 commits, you know, and they're all, you know, the 23 lines of change, 10 lines of change. Like, it's none of these are impactful that I would say.
Chances are those committers are not going to fork it and start.
No, those are people that we're fixing typos and documentation and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it is interesting because like even when we were talking to like you know Dean, and it's kind of like it is stuck in my memory, right? Like you know, like what was it? A Scala tree had like backwards syntactical incompatibilities, right? And we were talking about like you know, how do you do this with your community? And essentially when we had the discussion, Dean was very like saying like, you know, either you love Scala or you hate Scala. There's
Rod Johnson did a talk at Scala World. It's a talk I love to point back to, where he basically said, like, if you want to be serious and build a community and get, you know, enterprises behind you, you got to take things like backwards compatibility and all that stuff seriously.
Yeah.
They never really did. And so they've gotten better, but it's not to like Java standards. So it never got the adoption that a Java or something like that got. And so like, and unfortunately, you know, Akka came out of the same community that Scala did. So you run into that same problem.
Yeah, so it is essentially so essentially puts into light that projects that are based on Scala and the Scala community are at risk if they are like one sponsor type of deals, right? Like
without the proper community. So anytime you're evaluating open source, you have to evaluate things like maturity and whatnot. Community size is a real aspect to that. You know, like you could say, you know, I'm trying to think of one other than my own set of projects. I'm trying to not be biased here.
What about Spark? I mean, Spark has a company behind it. You know, there's a couple of you in the Apache ecosystem that tend to be dominated by one company.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're always looking at community health. You want a diversity in the contributors, because I mean, again, on an Apache project, if you leave your company, like nobody at Apache actually cares that you leave the company. Your merit remains with you, the individual, rather than the company you're contributing through. So if I contribute to Camel, and Red Hat is a huge contributor to Camel, and I leave Red Hat, I'm still a Camel committer. Like that doesn't change for me. Whereas in again, this is where we often agree to disagree. In the corporate governance model, a lot of times you leave the company, it's like, okay, good luck. You're submitting pull requests again.
You are, but on the other hand, like that's probably still okay. I mean, the question is, how,
even Apache, you probably want your code reviewed by somebody.
Well, not only that, but like it's, if you have enough people making meaningful contributions, the fork option becomes an option. If things go sideways from the corporate overlord, forking becomes an option if there's a healthy enough community.
If there's a healthy,
outside,
yes,
making meaningful contributions, etc. That is independent of the governance model, whether it's Apache or a single corporate governance.
The more people that know the code.
Exactly, 100%.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and then the more interest there is to like work with the code, because like right now it is interesting, like what companies are doing, and this is same first-hand experience is like, okay, what are our choices, right? Like like you said, we can pin this thing, or we can try to get a license, and license could be a choice, but it is a pretty penny. I think it's $2,000 per core, which is, if you're talking about an AWS presence and you start deploying, 500 machine clusters in Docker on Docker containers and stuff like that, it becomes astronomical, right?
Not only, I mean, also, Freddie, to that specific point, the timing was not only opportune, but also didn't give a lot of notice. Like, so it wasn't opportune. We're literally we just talked earlier on this recording about we're facing a recession, we're facing layoffs, and all of a sudden, the framework that you built your app on is looking for $2,000 a core. Like, wait a minute, we can't even employ our devs, and now you want like this. And then also just the fact that they didn't give a ton of notice here. It's not like they said we're doing this next year.
Yeah, it wasn't like a year plan. It was
this is, we're done
next month.
Yep, we're done. What's out is out. You want anything new, you got to pay for it. Which is
PR, right? Like, yeah, it was
a rug out from under your users. It really was yanking your. I mean, I can't imagine going to my management after investing my career in, we're going to build Akka, we're going to do, this is going to be some amazing tech. We're going to, build our infrastructure on this. Now I have to go back to my management and say, you know what?
It was
the company that thing that I sold you on, 6 months or a year, 2 years, 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, now they want $2,000 a core for every one of the thousands of microservices we have running. Like,
and the threshold is 25 million revenue,
which is not a high.
That's not very high.
No, it's not.
So I mean, the intent of a lot of these cloud licenses has always been, okay, we're going to hold the Amazons, the Googles, the Oracles, the Microsofts accountable to pay for stuff that they're using in their ecosystem. At 25 million, you are dealing with, I mean, not like early level startups, but a lot of mid-cap companies.
And
I would even say, like,
even small, smaller cap companies.
When you're talking about revenue, you can be talking about, series B and C.
Sure. No,
like
fair.
It's like if you're talking about revenue, you don't have to get.
They're not making money, but now you got to pay.
Exactly. And it's not a small amount.
Yeah.
So
and
that's for like not-for-profit is using this.
Well, I mean, so it's revenue.
Yeah.
So let's give a little. Let's segue a little bit that they have offered options to certain open source projects where they could apply for exemptions to this license. Yep. Now, I mean, so you as a project, and
have we seen anybody actually do that yet?
So I personally haven't. I can't speak to whether nobody has. Maybe there have. I mean, probably the poster child for it is what they've offered to play. If we were to model something after,
but that's also their own project.
It is their own project. But again, like that's what I think it would look like if it were to happen. But I guess, like, from my perspective, I'm an Apache Software Foundation guy, where I'm talking about using Apache code for things. It doesn't change the fact that it's BSL.
Okay.
It's still category X. I can't use it. So it's not like Flink can go out and ask for an exception and then everything is fine.
Yeah. It's
not ASF licensed code. So it doesn't. The thing that has surprised me is that, like, the folks that did this they like to talk about that they didn't think that this is how it was going to play out. Like, you should know better.
Yeah.
Like, the folks that are making these decisions should have really known how this was going to play out, and that, the projects that using it was going to get a category X. Like, it's not a surprise that it ended up in that territory. I mean, BSL has been on category X now for a while.
I mean, if you read the blog post that Jonas from Lightbend put, so Jonas is the CEO of Lightbend.
Right.
If you read that, I know Jonas. I've worked with him on the Reactive Foundation. It feels like a guy who's been beat. It reads like a guy that's been beat down by open source. Like
Sure.
It comes across as defeated. I mean, let me read a short paragraph. In the early days of open source, as in the early days of Akka, most of the work was done by passionate developers during late nights and weekends, all for the love of programming and the joy of working on it together. But in the last 10 to 15 years, this has drastically changed. In the infrastructure space, much of open source software is now created by companies, from small startups innovating and challenging the status quo to large enterprises seeing open source as a great way to attract talent and build communities and their brands. That paragraph to me reads as though that's a guy that's given up on open source.
It's sold.
Yeah, it reads as a guy that is trying to run a company on open source. It's not working out, and he's beat down.
Sure. Yeah, no, I hear that. I guess it's my thought is, some of the defense of this is like, oh, we didn't mean for this to happen, or we feel bad that this happened. But it's like,
been doing open source, like you said, for 10 to 15 years.
It was going to happen.
Yeah, come on.
These are category X licenses. It's not secret. There's no wiggle room. You kind of knew how this was going to play out, so you can't hide behind it.
Even beyond the licensing thing, just from how your community would react.
Yeah,
your community better than that.
Yeah,
Better.
Yeah. Like, because like so and so, I mean, the question I have is,
let's not hear ourselves. Throw out a Twitter poll. If we charge $2,000 a core for our framework, would you
keep software?
Yeah, for our currently free stuff, would you pay us?
I mean, oh my God. Well, we'll see, right? Like,
and I feel like, so the other thing that you had mentioned before is on the play piece. I feel like the play piece had a bunch of caveats to it to say, well, okay, yeah, there is a grant to play, but like, if you are explicitly using Akka within play, I thought there was like, yeah, you could still end up paying.
I mean,
you use play as a way to get Akka for free. Like,
I feel like they tried to cover that.
But let's not kid ourselves. It's so you can play gets the framework that we gave up, like literally like a year or so ago, they said we're walking away from. We'll grant them a dispensation. That just, again, it's
yeah, no, and the thing that I'm trying to figure out is how this is gonna like turn out, because the price tag is high enough that it's worth for medium size. Even if you just hire, it's gonna create a cottage industry of contractors of like, hey, I need you to get me out of Akka. Like,
yeah.
Maybe that's Lightbend's new model, business model.
Yeah, it's like, and so because that's sort of like what we're looking at is like what part, how much is it worth for us paying a license? How much is it worth just to say like, look, it's very neat, it's great, but there are other enterprise frameworks that we can use outside of this. And it's one of those, like, I'm trying to figure out when do we pay for things? We're usually fine because that's how we ended up like saying like it's almost like an upfront thing, right? Like when you get this piece of software, they say like, look, if you want to use it, you got to pay for it, and then we make the decision at the very onset. It's like, okay, fine, I'm fine getting a license for this particular ABC thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm trying to figure out like it's not paying that is a problem. It's just that it almost feels like a ransom where
it's a bait and switch. It is a ransom for those that have already using it.
Yeah, no, it's because I never I never occurred to me, and I know maybe this is my fault, but like it's almost like it's Apache license. It's something that you're like, okay, you know, like I maybe in the back of my head I thought there might be a risk, but like I wouldn't have thought. It's like, look at it, Apache license, they never change it. It's Lightbend. It's like I can just Scala every day, like, you know. And to be fair, it's only the past month with all this like before that I haven't even thought about any of this.
Yeah, I mean, so there is a condition for their BSL license that after 3 years, it does revert to Apache.
Yeah, so you can use
right. So if you're willing to wait 3 years on the software, it will become Apache license again. So if you're willing to use 3-year-old software, but like we're all aware of where things are at with dependency management, and security, and bill of materials. Like 3 years is an eternity.
It's an untenable option.
It's an eternity. So like it's like it's a false offering.
It's like might as well not have that concession. Like it doesn't help, right?
It doesn't help. Is right.
Yeah,
3 years is too long.
If you don't touch a project for a year and then you go back and you check the dependency, you're going to find a couple at least.
There's other problems that you need to worry about.
When you think of like, I've had, so in my current role, I have a lot of conversations with companies about, support. And I've talked to companies that said like, we cannot, due to compliance and legal reasons, we can't release software with a CV higher than, let's say, 7. Like,
sure.
If it is, we can't release it. You know?
Right.
And so like the 3 years, what am I supposed to do? Sit on a release for 3 years?
You monkey patch it.
Not an option.
Yeah.
No, you don't monkey patch it. I mean, nobody does that. I mean,
Well,
very rarely people will do that.
frameworks are built on that stuff.
They can. You can. Again, it's open source. If it's Apache licensed open source,
I know.
you can monkey patch. What does BSL say about that? I mean, like you're not going to do that, right? I mean, you could take the Apache licensed stuff and try to upgrade it if you're aware of what that change needs to be. But like, I don't know what happens if you start taking stuff down from the BSL license code and start putting the Apache code. I mean, you're getting yourself in a
no. It's clean room. Bob, it's clean room.
You'd have to re-implement it.
Yeah, differently. You're getting a copyright law. Like you're treading on unsafe.
Yeah, I was saying what was Judge Alito? Was that his name?
Sequence. What is it like? Sequence.
Because it's still going to be open. Like you'll be able to see the BSL license code. So you'll be able to see the security fix, but then it won't be Apache license. It's like, okay, how can I implement this differently so that it doesn't infringe on it? Like you get into a really weird place with all of this.
Yeah.
I don't like these cloud licenses, just to put that on the record.
But I would argue this is not a cloud license.
It's not even cloud. It's
at the level they're cutting it, right? You're well below the Amazons, Microsofts, Oracles, Googles.
The cloud licenses are intended to prevent,
big company, big company.
Yeah, I don't want to say abuse, but like,
that one I'm neutral.
Moving people, pushing the original companies out of their own space.
Right.
That's not what this is.
No, this is much lower.
This is a money grab.
This is, I need money. Papa needs to be paid. And I'm curious because so the way this is one way this is gonna go, right? Like there's gonna be the cottage industry of Akka, away from Akka developers. And then after that, you're probably going to have a core of Akka subscribers. That is going to be way smaller. I presume is going to be way smaller than what it is right now. Yeah. But then what happens to Lightbend? And that's going to be their model forever. Like would I pick up Scala? Even though I know that I won't pick Scala anyways, but like would any other company pick Scala?
I mean, that'll be the big question is what this does is it guarantees that Lightbend will have a certain level, like Lightbend probably isn't going to grow much. They're not going to shrink beyond whatever that initial size is either. They'll get, to your point, an existing set of subscribers because they feel that they have to, whether it's because they, for whatever legal reason, that's their staff, that's like what they, for whatever reason, they feel they can't move off from Akka. And so they're not going to, and so they'll pay the money, but nobody in their right mind would build a new application on Akka today. And because of that, it would never grow. And so it's literally just a matter of, Lightbend will stay here until those applications are slowly replaced as time evolves, and they'll.
So we're saying, like, are we saying that there is no like there are enough alternative on, like, Akka doesn't bring anything super special to the table, or do we think that even though it might be super special?
No, there's not a resilience for J as there was for Hysterex for Akka right now.
No,
I mean, there isn't a competitor.
Yeah, I mean, Akka is special software. I'm not going to discount what they've accomplished there. It is unique in the industry. I mean, there's.
But like, I'm trying to think, like, Erlang used to do this long time ago. So that's the part I'm so weird out about. Like,
I mean, you could do the same similar stuff with Reactor as well. I mean, Project Reactor, but Akka does have some distributed properties in there as well that, like, built into the framework that I don't know that any other one has.
I see. So there's,
I mean, the question is, could it limp around at the current Apache license version with just security fixes? Like, kind of like what AWS says they're doing with Karada, where it's like, look, we're not adding new features to the JDK, but we might patch a few things that would not otherwise be patched to just keep up with security. Like, is that what the Akka fork might look like?
Maybe.
It's possible. I mean, you have these companies like Amazon and Azul that are patching Java 8 still, and releasing it. So yeah, these JDKs could be around for a while.
My only hesitation to that is I just think of how any company I've ever worked for, they would fork it internally. They wouldn't create an open source repo.
Right. It feels like
it's their own. It becomes part of their own project. They'll keep the lights on kind of thing, for better or worse. Mostly worse. So, like, my fear is that there'd be a lot of forks of varying degrees of. You know where I'm going with this.
It's yeah. I mean, that could happen as well. It's not ideal, I think, for community members.
No.
That's why I would almost see it.
Do you think it's likely?
I think you would look for somebody that has critical mass to say, look, we're doing, again, it may come down to a big company like a Google, AWS, that has experience doing this, because, I mean, it has happened before. I mean, and again, the thing I mentioned before was OpenSearch, where they said, look, it is worth it for us to do a fork for our existing users.
Yep.
If you have a cloud provider that says, look, we got a lot of folks using Flink, or we got a lot of folks using Play, or we've got a lot of folks just might be using raw Akka, and we're going to provide a community fork with an Apache license where we're not, the BSL does not come into effect.
That makes sense.
That's where I see critical mass building. Do I know where that's going to happen? I don't. And it hasn't happened yet. So
that
we're aware of. So, I mean, it's still kind of wait and see. And it feels like that's based on what Flink wrote. They're going to wait and see and say, if we can limp by on the dependency that it's still Apache licensed.
Yeah. And
so I guess it's a conversation to revisit in like 6 months, because in 6 months, there's probably going to be stuff that needs to be patched.
Mm-hmm.
And if that community doesn't form in 6 months, it probably never will. I'll put that on for the record.
I agree with that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like there's like even when you're doing like the open source, right? Like, say like you decided to create an open source version of a fork, and you're right, but I'm trying to remember for like in OpenSearch, because you bring up a point where the code that Akka is putting out there is going to be visible. So and you having an open source fork in the wild, you are now going. Lightbend made a claim on the sand, a line on the sand. It's like, we need money, and this is how we're going to make money. So they're not going to be supportive. If anything, they're going to be hostile to any open, publicly viewed open source alternative to what they created. So
yeah, sure.
So yeah, it's almost like it's interesting, because if Lightbends were like to make the code closed source for the new releases, then kind of like, okay, fine, it's fair game. We can go in and stuff. But the moment that you publish the code and say this is code is on BSL, you can't just like then you gotta like almost like fight it in court that, yeah, there's only 3 ways that I can say if not this, because that's how you fix a vulnerability.
Yeah, I do think that adds some complexity to this, right? Because if you're publishing it out there, it's viewable, you're getting into the space of I believe copyright is where you end up, because if you're basically copying and pasting from a BSL license to an Apache license,
you couldn't. You'd have to.
I think you've got a problem.
You have to do clean room.
You got to do a clean room implementation of it.
What you do is you fire up Copilot. And then
there you go. There you go.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't disagree that it adds a level of complexity. It makes maintainers, if they were to fork, it makes their life harder. It doesn't make it any different than OpenSearch, though. I feel like that is the model that you're looking at, where Elastic still exists as a company. OpenSearch still exists as an Apache licensed project. They have similar constraints.
And it's interesting, because when I think of Elastic, I don't feel like I don't feel cheated, but even though they did do that, they did say like, oh, extra cool features, you got to pay for it. But I think it's because the core of their offering still works, and it works very well for a lot of like use cases. Like it never feel like it was like, oh my gosh, now I have to get the other stuff. Lightbend didn't give me a choice. So like if we were to play this like 5 years, like it's almost like Lightbend becomes like, they will not start new open source projects, or like if they like, there's no reason for them to do it from now on, because after this experience, what you learn is like what Lightbend produces, they might need to commercialize in a way that you will have to pay if you decide to consume this, which essentially effectively they bar themselves from being an open source contributor, and that might be fine, but it is something that Lightbend becomes its own quote unquote boutique software provider, where they have solutions for that may fit what you want, but you always pay for them, and that's all there is. Lightbend exits out of the open source space because there's just I think a lot of it is
free
like,
open source space.
The
free open source space.
I guess so, right? Like I guess. Yeah, it's interesting.
Hard to call. I mean, so you've got open source, the definition of license, it would not be an open source license based on the OSI. I mean, so yeah. I mean,
yeah, and
it's not open. It's not open source. It's, hey, we publish our source code publicly.
right. That's I'm confused about that one, right? Like
it is confusing. Yeah, I guess it's like when you talk about certifying something as open source, like they look for both of those constraints to be like, hey, the source is open and
it's free as beer.
Use it. Like the whole like, yeah, you can see it, but you got to pay for it if you make over $25 million.
Well, it's not, but the open source is not about use. It's about being able to copy the code.
It is technically not open source.
Well, yeah, but you're not saying if I compile Akka myself, I can use it, right?
That's what I'm saying. That's why there's a difference between just open source and free open source, right? I mean, like,
I think they exit out of both, right?
Yeah,
they publish their code just because it's fun, but they don't technically. There is no need nor interest. If anything, publishing the source code after the license change,
So
it's an encumbrance.
does the license change? Does the license allow you to copy it into? So does it allow you to reuse that source? That's the real question. Beyond the ability to use it, can I copy something out? You know what I'm getting at?
I hear what you're getting at, and I feel like that is.
I haven't read the license. I'm at.
Yeah, no, I mean, so it's like a lot of these, like, so BSL is being like, hey, we're an Apache license until you make X amount of money, and then all of these things kind of fall in place, right?
Oh, it's called source available license. So they say that you can use the code in development and non-production. But the moment you touch prod, you have to pay.
But yeah, to Michael's point is, can you use snippets of it? Like, where do you draw the line? Like, I feel like that's like you'd have to take that to court.
I mean, and
like, to be honest,
that's like when we talk about open source, like that's what I'm getting at is like there's nothing stopping me from creating a fork of Spring and charging for it, right? I mean, like
I feel like the line that you're asking for is like up to a judge. Like, I honestly don't know. That there's legislation that like will tell you where that is.
I mean, because what I'm getting at is you could do what I guess what would stop you from doing it, what Lightbend is doing with Akka with the existing license. License talk.
What do you mean by that?
Apache's license talks about use afterwards, right? It's not just about it's not just about copying the code. It's about you can actually run it for free, right?
Well, I mean, so the Apache license is really all about the code. Once you compile it, it's like, hey, you do you want. We try to most of the I say we, and I shouldn't say that. I mean, like the Apache license is really focused on the written software rather than the distribution. Like Apache will provide something called convenience binaries that we compiled for you that you can pull down your Maven project, but that's not really like what's really covered in the license. The license is about how the source code is written.
Yeah.
So when you start talking about distribution and things like that, it's pretty hands off. But this is the BSL is clearly talking about, hey, you're using our stuff. You make X amount of money, you got to pay for it. Like, once you start copying snippets of the code, or like, I actually don't know how that would play out. If you were to copy, say, a class of Akka and put it in your project, is that like
I said, I haven't read that. I haven't read the license. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know where the line is on that to where it's like, okay, you've copied enough Akka code, you need to be paying for Akka. I'm not sure.
I don't know if there's any legislation that actually says
legislation or even a lot of court precedent for that. I honestly don't know where that line is. So, I mean, you I don't want anybody to push your luck.
Yeah, because
you'd almost have to like do that.
Because the Apache license, I just pulled it up. Basically, they explicitly say you can reproduce the compiled as well as the source. Like you can.
Yeah. Okay.
It explicitly says that.
Yeah.
You may reproduce and distribute copies of the work or derivative works thereof in any medium with or without modifications.
Yes.
And in source or object form. An object is
compiled.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what we assume. Yes.
Yes. So like
just include
I haven't read the new license to know.
Do they change it when it gets to object form?
Exactly.
Sure. No,
even source form. Like can I
copy
that CVE fix?
Yeah.
If they put a CVE fix in there, can I copy it over to a fork?
And I mean, these are all the new ground that you end up going into. Like the whole strategy right now that you're seeing that's very popular is creating these alternative open source licenses that once you make X amount of money, it's no longer open source and you got to pay. Like a lot of them are very, very thin wrappers over the open source. And it's like, I don't think a lot of this is really thought through.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly don't know what would happen. And I think not knowing is part of the risk involved in adopting one of these licenses. Like, so what does happen if I copy 2 or 3 files from your BSL license code?
Okay. So actually
I don't know.
I'm actually looking at the Akka license right now.
Oh, this says, if I modify the source code of software license under BSL, can I redistribute my modified version under the Apache 2.0 license? It says no. So, so it carries the BSL with it. So it's like you cannot do new.
It still depends on how much money I make, whether I can copy classes or not.
No, actually, I think that one doesn't have the.
There's an additional use grant here. If you develop an application using version of Play framework that uses, so it's just for Play.
They did do some like exceptions for Play.
But it says you may use such binary versions of Akka.
Oh, look, what happens if I mix Akka's BSL code with other code?
That's the question.
Until the change date, the final mixed code will be bound by the license of the BSL code and the license of the other code. That means that the mixed code will still require a commercial license for production usage of BSL license. So if you copy any of the code,
okay,
you're bound by the BSL.
All right.
So a point of clarification, which I didn't know, like Lightbend does not wrong Scala. Yeah, because they are asking, like, does this change affect Scala or SBT? And says, no, it does not. Scala and SBT are not managed by Lightbend. But I don't know if that is just if Lightbend effectively managed Scala anyways. But
yeah, it says all copies of the original modified licensed work and derivative works of licensed work are subject to this license. So yeah, you can't use it. You can't bring the code over.
So I guess it's
we're trying to lawyer over drinks and real time here. I mean, so it's fair that like if reading through the license like we're doing right now, it's not super clear. Like again, it's probably something that
I think it is clear. It's you can't.
You can't.
You cannot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the copying of the code is restricted.
Is a no-go.
Once you start talking at that, but is it still restricted based on how much money you make? Like, because again, if you're saying, hey, it's Apache licensed, and let's say I make under $25 million, like I can copy Akka code all I want.
I mean, the license doesn't actually talk about the $25 million. That's their contract.
Yeah, man, maybe not.
Right. You still get a BSL license, you just don't pay for it.
Yeah.
I think it's yeah.
That's Lightbend's like, okay, we'll let you use it for.
Sure. So you get a commercial license that says, okay, yeah, sure.
So I mean,
so in absence of the commercial license, you're not able to copy the code at all into your project. So, and I mean, and again, that all makes sense of why it's not considered open source, because if I can't copy your code into my project,
exactly, that's not
it's not an open source license. It is.
But you can look at the code.
You can look at it, look, but don't touch.
Which is actually worse.
Yes.
So
do not disagree.
Depending which side you're on, right? I mean, it's
no.
Anybody from
we've all had those decompilers. We've seen the code we're not supposed to use.
Yeah, no, but the thing is, it's all by code anyways. But no, so the question is this is a case, right? We hope Lightbend make the best decision they can for their company. The ways that this is going to pan out, I think it's probably.
I think it's wait and see. We don't know how it's going to. I mean, so we've talked about a couple of possible ways that it can go. We've talked about the reasons of why and why it may not pan out that way. But time will tell. I mean, I think we're going to know within the next 6 months where this is going to go.
Now, the question
because if nothing happens, I think Michael is right. And then we're not going to, if they don't fork in 6 months, we're probably never going to see a fork.
So
public fork.
Public fork. Yes.
So,
public fork.
And by that note, if we're able to do a show at Devnexus, then we can rehash.
That is a great setup for that show.
Maybe we can get somebody from Lightbend.
Yeah,
but that does bring like what does it mean? Let's say for example,
Lightbend that we know
that Lightbend is successful.
Jonas. Yeah. Okay.
Let's say that Lightbend is successful on their endeavor, and then other companies who want to do the same move. Is this going to change the way that open source is done? Where
if it's successful, if they actually can build a real business around all of a sudden charging thousands of dollars a core on something that this would rock.
Hey, only
open
$10
source.
per core. That's all.
This would rock
$10 per
open
core.
source to its core.
Yeah.
Which is,
It's
I wish the best for Lightbend, because like I said, I know people that work there and all that, but like I feel the same way about this as I do about the Cubs and the Marquee TV network. It's like, I keep praying for that thing to fail, because if it succeeds, that means I'm never going to watch sports again without paying for every individual team's.
oh my gosh! Can you
network.
imagine like
It's the same thing. Like if this succeeds, open source it is open.
It's going to change. I would see a lot of copycats following this model if it did end up being successful.
oh gosh, yeah.
But I also, which is one of the reasons why I can't see it
being successful.
right, because think about your average application, right? Think of all the dependencies you have in. Think of all of a sudden getting a bill for every individual dependency. Like it would fundamentally change how we write software. Like the whole idea of using third-party dependencies like we do.
I mean,
it would be over.
It's interesting because it brings me like Linus Torvalds was very adamant of letting control of the Linux kernel, right? Like he will never have these kinds of problems because he control everything from soup to nuts. But like it's one of those where we are trusting the community, and I guess community is kind of like ephemeral, like large, that this is not the norm, because if it becomes a norm, Lord, if I cannot even think if and you're never gonna do this, Michael, because you're on recording, but if Pivotal ever charges a dime, I'm dead, because why
Stop
are we
giving
gonna
you ideas, Freddie?
Fortunately, Pivotal I promise you, Freddie, Pivotal will never charge you a dime. Pivotal doesn't exist anymore.
And if they do, I want a perpetual license. Let's record it.
Now, Broadcom for it. No.
No.
We can't talk about that. I know.
Come on.
I know. I'm saying it, not you.
We did the Reza thing back when Pivotal spun out. We don't need to be doing more this stuff.
Gosh, no, but it's yeah. Let's hope, because like I said, like we want. I like you said, I wish Lightbend the best. Hopefully they, as a company, again, we do have people that we know and the dear and near to us, but if that becomes the model that open source is based off, I guess it stops being open source, really. Yeah, it's gonna be a dark future. So we want you to be successful, but not too successful. Yes. That's how we leave it. And hopefully, I do agree that like they had to do something maybe, but this one, if this is the only choice they had, maybe it's a failure from, I don't know if they had another, if they can have played this out any other way. But since they choose this playbook, hopefully it'll be great. And I think that's it for this episode. We'll see, like everybody says, time will tell. If you guys have any other words for it.
Nope.
No, nothing that won't go into another discussion, so I'll leave it at that.
How are we going to support Jakarta EE and Akka? No, but definitely. Thanks for listening. And I think that's all we have for today. All right. This is Freddie signing off.
All right. Bob signing off.
Josh signing off.
This is Michael signing off. If you're on Twitter, follow us at OffHeap. And if you're on YouTube, check us out there, and be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe.
All right. Happy programming, everyone.